The ships came on a Tuesday morning. They blocked out the sun over every major city on Earth at the same time. People stopped in the streets and looked up. Some screamed. Some prayed. Most just stood there with their mouths open, unable to understand what they were seeing. The Empire had traveled across the stars for 10,000 years. They had conquered 800 worlds. They had killed billions of beings who dared to resist them. To the Earth was just another planet. Humans were just another species to be broken and enslaved. The first strikes came without warning. Massive beams of purple light fell from the ships and turned cities into ash. New York was gone in seconds. London followed. Beijing, Moscow, Tokyo. In 1 hour, 3 billion humans died. The screams of the dying could be heard around the world through every phone, every radio, every television. General was in a bunker deep under the mountains of Colorado when the attack began. He watched the screens as city after city vanished. His hands shook, but his mind stayed clear. He had trained for war his entire life. This was not the war he had expected, but it was still war. "Get me every surviving military commander on the planet," he said to his team. "Now." The ground forces came next. They were tall creatures, nearly 8 feet, with gray skin and 4 arms. Their eyes glowed red in the darkness. They wore armor that could stop any bullet humans had. They carried weapons that could cut through tanks like paper. The human militaries fought back. Soldiers fired their guns and launched their missiles, but they barely noticed. They walked through the bullets. They laughed at the explosions. In 3 days, every organized military on Earth was destroyed. But they made a mistake. They thought they had won. Escaped the bunker with 40 soldiers before they found it. They moved through the mountains at night, hiding in caves and abandoned mines. They watched the ships patrol the seas. They watched their world burn. "We cannot fight them directly," told his people. "Not yet. First we learn, then we plan, then we strike." They set up their occupation quickly. They built great towers in the ruins of human cities. They rounded up survivors and put them in camps. Humans were useful, they decided. Humans could work in the mines. Humans could serve in their houses. Humans could be sold to other species across the galaxy. But humans could also hide, and humans could remember. In basements and caves, in forests and deserts, small groups of survivors began to organize. They called themselves the Resistance. They had no ships, no alien weapons, and no hope of winning. But they had something they did not understand. They had rage. Sarah Park was a scientist before the invasion. She studied physics at a university that no longer existed. When they killed her husband and children, something broke inside her, but something else grew in its place. Something cold and sharp and patient. She found group after 3 months of walking through the wilderness. She was thin and dirty and had not slept in days, but her eyes were bright with purpose. "I know how their weapons work," she told. "I watched them. I studied the energy signatures. I can build something to fight back." Looked at this small woman who had walked through hell to find them. He saw the fire in her eyes. He nodded. "Show me," he said. The resistance grew slowly. Survivors found each other through whispered messages and secret signs. Former soldiers joined. Former teachers. Former doctors. Former children who had watched their parents die. They came from every country, every culture, every background. They had only 2 things in common: they were human and they wanted revenge. They did not notice them at first. Why would they? They had conquered hundreds of worlds. They had seen resistance before. It always failed. These primitive humans with their primitive weapons could do nothing against the might of the Empire. This belief would cost them everything. Established hidden bases across what remained of North America. Each base was small, no more than 100 people. Each base was connected to the others through a network of messengers who traveled only at night. They controlled the skis, but they could not watch every inch of ground. Sarah Park worked in a cave lit by stolen generators. She took apart pieces of technology that the Resistance had captured from dead soldiers. She studied. She learned. She built. "Their armor has a weakness," she announced one day. "The energy field that protects them operates at a specific frequency. If we can match that frequency with our own energy pulse, we can shut it down." "Can you build a weapon that does this?" asked. Sarah smiled. It was not a nice smile. "I can build something better." 6 months after the invasion, the Resistance attacked a patrol for the first time. It was a small group, just 10 alien soldiers walking through the ruins of Denver. They were not worried. They had done this walk many times before. They did not see the humans hiding in the broken buildings. They did not see the strange devices pointed at them. They only saw a flash of blue light, and then their armor stopped working. For the first time, soldiers felt human bullets tear through their flesh. For the first time, they felt fear. They tried to call for help, but their communications were jammed. They tried to run, but humans blocked every path. Not one soldier survived. Stood over the bodies and felt something he had not felt in months: hope. "This is just the beginning," he said to his fighters. "Now they know we are still here. Now they will learn to be afraid." The news spread through the Resistance like fire. Humans could kill humans could fight back. Humans could win. In the camps where survivors suffered under masters, whispers began. In the mines where humans worked until they died, people started to plan. In the great towers where commanders laughed at the broken world below them, something began to change. They had made a mistake. They had conquered Earth, but they had not conquered humanity. And humanity was just getting started. The response to the Denver attack was swift and brutal. They burned 3 survivor camps and killed 10,000 humans. They thought this would end the Resistance. They thought wrong. Every death made the humans angrier. Every atrocity brought more fighters to cause. They did not understand this. On other worlds, terror had always worked. The conquered species had always submitted, but humans were different. Sarah Park watched the news of the massacres on a captured data screen. Her face showed no emotion. Inside, her heart burned. "I need more technology," she told. "More weapons, more armor, more ships if you can get them." Ships raised an eyebrow. "You want to fly?" "I want to do more than fly," Sarah said. "I want to burn them the way they burned us." The Resistance began a campaign of targeted strikes. They attacked supply convoys. They destroyed communication towers. They killed patrols and took their equipment. Each attack was small, but together they added up. The commanders grew frustrated. They sent more soldiers to hunt the Resistance, but the humans moved like ghosts. They struck and vanished. They knew the land in ways they never could. James Wright had been a Marine before the invasion. He had lost his entire unit in the first hours of the attack. Now he led a team of 50 fighters who specialized in close combat. They called themselves the Shadows. "They are strong," Wright told his people, "but they are slow. They rely on their technology. Take away their technology and they are just big targets." The Shadows developed new tactics. They used traps and ambushes. They attacked at night when the sensors worked less well. They learned to move in ways that the alien systems could not track. One night, Wright's team infiltrated a weapons depot. It was heavily guarded, but the Shadows had spent weeks studying the patrol patterns. They slipped through the defenses like water through cracks in stone. Inside, they found more than just weapons. They found a small shuttle used for transporting supplies. It was the first spacecraft the Resistance had ever captured. Sarah Park nearly cried when she saw it. "This changes everything," she whispered. She spent 3 months taking the shuttle apart and putting it back together. She learned how the engines worked. She learned how their shields operated. She learned secrets that had kept hidden for thousands of years. "Their technology is advanced," she told, "but it is not magic. It follows rules. And anything that follows rules can be understood. Anything that can be understood can be defeated." The Resistance established a secret base in what had once been the Nevada desert. They called it Hope. Here, Sarah trained other scientists. Here, they built new weapons based on technology. Here, they began to dream of something more than survival. Received reports from resistance cells across the world. In Europe, fighters had destroyed a mining operation. In Asia, a group had freed 3,000 humans from a labor camp. In South America, rebels had killed a commander in his own tower. The humans were learning. The humans were adapting. The humans were winning small victories that added up to something bigger. But the empire was vast. Earth was just one conquered world among hundreds. The Resistance could fight forever on Earth and never truly defeat the empire. Knew this. Sarah knew this. Everyone knew this. "We need to take the fight to them," said at a meeting of resistance leaders. "We need to hit them where they live. We need to make them understand that conquering Earth was the worst mistake they ever made." "How?" asked Doctor, who ran the medical teams. "We have a handful of captured ships. They have thousands." "We start small," said. "We capture more ships, we train pilots, we build our own fleet, and then we make them pay." It took 2 years. 2 years of fighting on Earth while secretly building a space force. 2 years of sacrifice and death and terrible losses. But humans were patient when they needed to be. And humans never forgot. Sarah Park created the first human-built spacecraft. It was ugly and rough, made from pieces of ships held together with human engineering. But it flew. And it had weapons that they had never seen before. "I call it the Vengeance," Sarah said as she showed it to, "the first of many." They finally realized the danger too late. They had ignored the Resistance for too long, thinking it was just a minor annoyance. By the time they understood what the humans were building, it was already too late to stop them. The first space battle happened in orbit above Earth. 50 human ships faced a patrol fleet of 20 vessels. The commanders laughed when they saw the rough human ships. They stopped laughing when the first human missiles tore through their shields. Sarah's weapons worked perfectly. They disrupted the shields just long enough for conventional explosives to get through. Ship after ship exploded in the darkness of space. They tried to retreat, but the humans pursued them relentlessly. Not one ship escaped. On Earth, people looked up at the night sky and saw flashes of light. Some knew what it meant. Others dared to hope. Word spread quickly. Humans were fighting in space. Humans were winning. Watched the battle from the command center at Hope. His hands were steady now. His heart was cold. "Send a message to the Empire," he ordered. "Tell them Earth is no longer theirs. Tell them we are coming for them. Tell them we will never stop until every last one of them is dead." The message was transmitted across the galaxy. In the great throne rooms of the Emperor heard it. For the first time in his long life, he felt something like fear. The conquered were rising, and they were hungry for blood. The Empire sent a fleet to crush the human rebellion. 300 warships, the largest force they had assembled in centuries. The Emperor himself ordered the attack. He wanted Earth burned to nothing. He wanted every human dead. The fleet arrived at Earth expecting an easy victory. They found something different. Had used the time well. The human fleet had grown to 200 ships. They were smaller than the vessels, faster and more agile, and they were crewed by people who had nothing left to lose. The battle lasted 3 days. Space around Earth filled with fire and wreckage. Both sides suffered terrible losses, but humans fought with a fury they had never seen. They rammed their ships into vessels when their weapons failed. They launched suicide attacks against enemy flagships. They died by the thousands, but they did not retreat. On the second day, Sarah Park led a strike team onto the command ship. They fought through corridors filled with enemy soldiers. They lost half their people before reaching the bridge. But when they got there, Sarah personally killed the admiral with a weapon she had built with her own hands. "That was for my children," she said as she watched him die. When the battle ended, 112 human ships remained. Only 43 ships escaped back to their empire. The rest were debris floating in the void. The victory changed everything. Species across the galaxy heard the news. The empire, which had dominated for 10,000 years, had been defeated by a primitive race they had conquered just 3 years ago. Some species began to hope. Others began to plan. Did not celebrate. He knew the war was not over. He knew the Emperor would send more ships. He knew Earth could not survive another attack like that one. "We cannot stay on defense," he told his commanders. "We need to strike at their heart. We need to take this war to their." "That's suicide," said Wright, who had become one of his top generals. "They have thousands of ships protecting their core systems." "Then we will need to be smart," replied. "We will need allies. We will need to turn their own empire against them." They had conquered many species over the. Most served them out of fear. But fear could become hatred when hope appeared. And humanity had just given the galaxy hope. Sent ambassadors to other conquered worlds. They traveled in captured ships, avoiding patrols and sneaking through enemy space. They brought a simple message: join us and we will help you become free. Fight alone and they will destroy us all. The first species to answer were the. They were small creatures, barely 4 feet tall, with blue skin and 6 eyes. They had enslaved them 5,000 years ago and used them as servants. They had learned to pretend to be harmless, but they never forgot their hatred. "We will fight," the leader told the human ambassador. "We have waited so long for this day." Others followed. A race of warriors who had been forced to serve as soldiers. The Vex, brilliant engineers who had been made to build ships. The Moth, telepaths who could sense thoughts and share information across vast distances. Each species brought something to the Alliance. Each species had their own reasons for wanting the destroyed. Together, they began to build a force that could challenge the Empire. Sarah Park worked with Vex engineers to improve human ship designs. The new vessels were faster, stronger, and carried weapons that could cut through armor like nothing before. She also learned secrets about the secrets the Empire had kept hidden for thousands of years. "Their planet is called Prime," she reported to. "It has 3 moons, all heavily armed. Their main fleet is stationed there, over 5,000 ships, and at the center of their capital city is the Imperial Palace, where the Emperor rules." "That's our target," said. "We kill the Emperor, we break the Empire." "It will cost us everything we have," Sarah said. "I know," replied, "but we have already lost everything once. We survived. We will do whatever it takes." The Alliance fleet gathered in a hidden location far from territory. Humans, Vex, Moth, and others joined together. They trained. They planned. They prepared for the final battle. Now the Alliance's chief medical officer walked through the ships treating wounded and sick from all species. She had learned to heal alien bodies as well as human ones. She had become a symbol of hope for creatures who had never known kindness from another species. "Why do you help us?" a young asked her one day. "They conquered you. You could have stayed on your world and rebuilt." "Because they would have come back," said. "And because what they did to us, they did to you and all the others. We are all survivors. We are all family now." They looked at her with all 6 eyes. For a moment saw something like tears, then they bowed deeply. "We will never forget what humans have done for us," they said. "Never." Received reports that they were preparing another massive attack on Earth. The Emperor had gathered every ship he could spare. He planned to end the human threat once and for all. But was ready. The Alliance would not wait for the attack. They would strike first. "We leave in 3 days," he announced to the assembled forces. "Our destination is Prime. Our mission is simple. We end the empire that enslaved us all." The cheers that followed shook the walls of every ship in the fleet. Humans and aliens stood together, united by suffering and hope. They had all lost so much. Now they would make the pay. Sarah stood beside as he watched the preparations. Her hair had turned gray in the years since the invasion. Her face showed the marks of battles and grief, but her eyes still burned with the same fire she had when she first found the resistance. "Do you think we can win?" she asked. "I think we have no choice," replied. "We win or we die. There is no other option." Sarah nodded. "Then let's make sure we win." The Alliance fleet jumped into space on a cold morning by Earth's calendar. 1,000 ships carrying the hopes of a dozen species. They were outnumbered. They were far from home. They were facing the greatest military power the galaxy had ever known. They did not care. Stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Earth's Memory. He looked at the screens showing the defenses ahead. Thousands of enemy ships, orbital weapons platforms, defense satellites that could vaporize a fleet in seconds. "Begin the attack," he ordered. The battle for Prime was the largest the galaxy had seen in 10,000 years. Ships clashed in waves of fire and death. The darkness of space lit up with explosions. Millions died in the first hour alone. They fought with desperation. They knew what defeat would mean. They threw everything they had at the Alliance fleet. For a time, it seemed like they might win. But the Alliance had planned well. While the main fleet engaged the defenders, a smaller force slipped past the battle. Sarah Park led this strike team personally. Their target was the Imperial Palace itself. They landed on Prime under cover of the chaos above. The ground was red, the sky was purple, and the air smelled of death. The strike team moved fast through the alien landscape, killing any soldiers they encountered. "The palace is ahead," Sarah reported. "Heavy resistance." "Push through," his voice came through her communicator. "We're holding them off up here, but we can't last much longer. You need to end this." Sarah led her team forward. They fought through wave after wave of defenders. They lost people with every step, but they did not stop. The Imperial Palace was a massive structure, built from black stone that seemed to absorb light. It had stood for 15,000 years, a symbol of power. Today, it would fall. Sarah and what remained of her team entered through a breach in the walls. Inside, they found the Emperor's personal guard waiting. These were the elite of the military, the deadliest soldiers in the galaxy. The fighting was brutal. Humans killed each other at close range. Blood and bodies filled the corridors. Sarah took a wound to her shoulder but kept going. She had not come this far to fail. Finally, they reached the throne room. The doors were sealed, but Sarah had brought special charges. She placed them carefully and stepped back. "For Earth," she whispered, "for everyone they killed." The explosion tore the doors apart. The Emperor sat on his throne, waiting. He was old, ancient by standards, with scales that had faded to pale gray. His red eyes watched Sarah as she entered. "So this is what humans look like," he said. His voice was cold and calm. "Such small creatures, I never bothered to learn before." "You killed 3 billion of us on the first day," Sarah said. "You enslaved millions more, and you never even looked at us." "Why would I? You were nothing, insects to be stepped on." The Emperor smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Even now you have accomplished nothing. Kill me and another will take my place. The Empire will continue." "No," Sarah said, "it won't." She raised her weapon and fired. The Emperor died without another word. But Sarah's work was not done. She moved to the control center beneath the throne. Here, she found what she had been looking for, the central computer that controlled the entire war machine. Every ship, every weapon, every defense system was connected to this network. Sarah had spent years preparing for this moment. She inserted the device she had built, a virus that would spread through every system in the galaxy. It would shut down their ships. It would disable their weapons. It would leave them helpless. "It's done," she reported. "Get everyone out of here." In orbit, the fleet suddenly went dark. Ships stopped moving. Weapons stopped firing. The Alliance forces watched in amazement as their enemies drifted helplessly in space. "Understood immediately," Sarah did it, she actually did it. All forces, he announced. Destroy them all. What followed was not a battle, it was an execution. The Alliance ships moved through the frozen fleet and killed without mercy. They destroyed every ship, every station, every defense platform. They showed no quarter. They took no prisoners. On the ground, Alliance soldiers swept through cities. They found terrified civilians hiding in their homes. They found soldiers trying to surrender. They found children and elderly who posed no threat. They killed them anyway. Watched the reports come in. Part of him felt sick at what they were doing, but a larger part remembered the day they came to Earth. He remembered the cities burning. He remembered the screams of the dying. No mercy, he said. They showed us none. They get none in return. The purge of Prime took 3 days. When it was finished, not a single remained alive on there. The black palaces were rubble. The great cities were ash. 10,000 years of civilization wiped away in 72 hours. Sarah emerged from the ruins of the imperial palace as the sun set. She was wounded and exhausted, but she was alive. Met her outside. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Then Sarah allowed herself to cry for the first time since the invasion. "We did it," she said. "We actually did it." "Not yet," replied. "There are other worlds, other fleets. We need to finish what we started." Sarah wiped her eyes and nodded. Her tears had stopped as quickly as they had come. "Then let's finish it," she said. The Alliance fleet, battered but unbroken, left Prime and headed for the next target. They would spend the next 3 years hunting down every colony, every hidden base, every ship that tried to flee. The galaxy watched in fear and wonder as humans led the destruction of the mightiest empire ever known. Some species celebrated. Others wondered if they would be next. They had ruled through terror. Now they died in terror. Every world they had conquered, every species they had enslaved, turned against them. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The hunters had become the hunted, and the hunt would not end until every was dead. The war ended 5 years after it began. 5 years of blood and fire and vengeance. 5 years of hunting across 1,000 worlds. In the end, not a single remained alive in the known galaxy. Some said it was genocide. Some said it was justice. The species who had suffered under rule called it liberation. The humans called it necessary. Stood on the observation deck of Earth's memory, now the flagship of the Allied fleet. Below him, Earth turned slowly in the darkness of space. The planet was still from the invasion. Some cities would never be rebuilt. Some wounds would never heal. But humanity had survived, and humanity had won. Sarah joined him at the window. She was older now, her hair completely white, her face marked by years of war. But her eyes still held that fire, even if it burned lower than before. "The last colony has been confirmed destroyed," she said. "It's over." "Is it?" asked. "Sometimes I wonder if it will ever really be over, if we will ever be able to move past what we did." "What we did was survive," Sarah said. "What we did was make sure they could never hurt anyone again. I don't regret it." Nodded slowly. "Neither do I, but I wonder what kind of people we have become. We killed an entire species. Every man, woman, and child. We erased them from existence." "They would have done the same to us," Sarah said. "They tried to do the same to us. The only difference is that we succeeded where they failed." Below them, a new city was being built where Denver had once stood. Humans and aliens worked side by side, constructing something new from the ruins of the old. The Alliance had held together after the war. Different species who had once been enemies had become friends, united by their shared struggle. They had settled a colony in what had been northern Europe. Their small forms could be seen in the streets of human cities, working and living alongside their former fellow slaves. They had established a training academy in Asia, teaching warriors from every species how to defend against any future threat. The Vex were helping to rebuild human technology, sharing secrets that had once been forbidden. Earth was no longer just a human world. It was the heart of something new. James Wright, now an old man covered in scars, came to stand with Sarah. He had led the ground forces through countless battles. He had killed more than anyone could count. Now he was tired. "The Council is asking for you," Wright said. "They want to discuss the future of the Alliance." Turned away from the window. The Allied Council was made up of representatives from every species in the Alliance. They met on Earth, in a great hall built on the ruins of the United Nations building. It was there that the fate of the galaxy would be decided. "What future do you think we should have?" asked. Wright shrugged. "Peace would be nice, but I don't think we'll get it. The galaxy is a big place. There are other empires out there, other threats. Someone will come for us eventually." "Then we'll be ready," said. "We've shown what happens when you attack Earth. We've shown what happens when you try to enslave humanity. Anyone who comes at us now will know what they're facing." The council meeting was long and difficult. Representatives argued about territory, about resources, about the proper way to govern a galactic alliance. But in the end, they agreed on one thing. Never again would any species be allowed to dominate the galaxy through fear and conquest. The Allied Declaration was signed by every species in the alliance. It promised mutual defense against any aggressor. It guaranteed freedom and dignity for all peoples. It established a fleet that would patrol the galaxy and protect the weak from the strong. And at its heart, written in bold letters that could not be misunderstood, was a simple warning. The people of the Alliance will never submit to tyranny. Those who seek to conquer will be destroyed without mercy. Let all who would be enemies of freedom know this. We remember what was done to us, and we will never forget. Signed the Declaration for Humanity. As he wrote his name, he thought of all the people who had died to make this moment possible. The billions killed in the first attack, the thousands who had fought and fallen in the resistance, the soldiers who had given their lives in the battles across the stars. They were gone, but their sacrifice had meaning now. After the ceremony, walked alone through the ruins of the old United Nations building. Much of it had been cleared away, but some sections remained, a memorial to the world that had been lost. He found a piece of wall with old paintings still visible, art from a time before the invasion. "Was it worth it?" a voice asked behind him. He turned to find watching him. She had grown old too, her medical work having taken its toll. But she was still the most compassionate person had ever known. "I don't know," he admitted. "We saved humanity. We saved a lot of other species too, but we also killed billions. We wiped out an entire civilization, children who had never done anything wrong, elders who just wanted to live in peace. They had thousands of years to learn mercy," said. "They never did. If we had shown them mercy, they would have eventually recovered. They would have come back. They would have done to us what they did to so many others." "I know the reasons," said. "I gave the orders, but knowing something is necessary doesn't make it right." Put a hand on his shoulder. "Maybe there's no such thing as right in war. Maybe there's only survival and extinction. We survived. They didn't, that's all." Looked at the old art on the wall. It showed people dancing, celebrating life. A world that had believed in peace and cooperation. A world that had been destroyed. "We need to be better than this," he said. "Not for ourselves, for the future. We need to make sure that humanity never becomes what they were. We need to remember not just what they did to us, but what we did to them." Nodded. "That's why we need people like you. People who remember, people who carry the weight. Someone has to." They stood together in silence for a long moment, then straightened his shoulders and walked back toward the light. Outside, the sun was setting over the new city. Humans and aliens gathered in the streets to celebrate the signing of the Declaration. Music played, food was shared, and laughter filled the air. For the first time in years, there was genuine joy. Sarah found watching the celebration from a balcony. She handed him a drink and raised her own. "To the dead," she said. "To the dead," he agreed, "all of them." They drank in silence. Far above, the stars shone cold and distant. Somewhere out there, other civilizations were watching. They had seen what humanity had done. They had seen the power of a species pushed to the edge of extinction. Some would fear humanity, some would respect them, some would hate them. But none would ever underestimate them again. Earth had been conquered. Humanity had struck back, and the empire that had dared to enslave them was nothing but dust and memory. This was the lesson that echoed across the galaxy. This was the story that would be told for 10,000 years. Do not threaten humans. Do not attack their world. Do not try to break their spirit. Because they will not break. They will adapt, they will fight, they will win. And if you push them far enough, they will erase you from existence. Without mercy, without hesitation, without regret. The stars belong to everyone now, and humanity would make sure it stayed that way. No matter the cost,